3, 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of Wrestling with the Future. I'm your host, Psychic Medium Angelo. We'll be joined shortly by my co-host, Dan the Man Sebastiano. But tonight, I have a very, very special guest, and I want to get right into it. In a career spanning nearly 5 decades, Bill Apter became more famous than some of the notable athletes he covered. By gracing the covers of an Apter bag, your career was virtually assured regardless of who you may have been. He is arguably the single most respected wrestling sports journalist in the United States, and he is a man who I have dubbed the gatekeeper of Kayfabe. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to present to you Bill Apter. Bill, how are you, my friend?
It's great, but I can't talk to you because I'm kayfabing everything. So, no, thank you for that great, that great introduction. It was absolutely spectacular. I really appreciate it.
You are quite welcome. Speaking of kayfabe, Bill, let's get right into it. There's a story in your book that
Wait, 1 sec. I just want to
sir.
tell you something based upon your introduction.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to say something that the late, great Captain Lou Albano used to say about himself. Brother, I'm a legend in my own mind. So, yeah, let's get right into the book.
That's beautiful.
This book?
Yeah, that book.
This one
is wrestling fixed. I didn't know it was broken.
I didn't know it was broken.
I know. Well, let's talk about, there's a story in your book. And for people who don't have this book, what are you waiting for? Go out and get it. Is Wrestling Fixed? I didn't know it was broken, by Bill Apter. There's a story I feel I'm involved in. And okay. I knew all the participants and a couple of them very, very well. Bob Zmuda, Andy Kaufman, Jerry Lawler, Bill Apter.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Wait. For a New Yorker like I am, it's Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman.
Kaufman, all right.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? He corrected me about that a lot. It would just come out, Andy Kaufman.
Oh, it's all right. Go ahead.
It's a Philly thing, It's funny about that. New York is Kaufman, South Philly, it's Kaufman.
Well, I live in the burbs in Philadelphia, so I have to be careful which neighborhood I go into to say his name.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this. You were of the mindset that Bob Zmuda, for some reason or another, didn't like you, and wouldn't acknowledge you. I think really is that they wouldn't acknowledge you.
Yeah, I never said he didn't like me. I've never, if I met him, it was maybe one time. I don't know whether he likes me or not likes me, but in his book, when he detailed the story of how Andy got to Jerry Lawler, just like the movie Man on the Moon, they passed me right by. Man on the Moon producers said it just wasn't Hollywood enough, so I got it. But I don't know why Bob skipped over it. I don't know him at all. Yeah. He's a very funny person. Does he not like me? I don't know.
Well, I think I can put the kibosh on it for you. I know Bob Zmuda, and I knew Andy. Bob was very protective of Andy, and he was always suspect of people who he thought wanted something from Andy or his related fame. And I think it was just Bob being Bob. He's a very cautious guy when it came to Andy. I can honestly say I believe it's not that he didn't like you. He didn't really know you. Right. He didn't know you like the world of wrestling did. Certainly Andy knew who you were. Mm-hmm. Very well, in fact. And I was involved in a little bit of that, because I knew Andy and Bob and J.J. McGuire, who was involved, who knew the secrets back in the day, and myself. There was only, and as you know, Bill, there were only a handful of guys that this close-knit group of guys that really knew what was going on. Yeah. Was it a work? Was it a shoot? Andy and Jerry were magnificent in blurring the line. Oh, and Andy blurred the line in life quite a bit, by the way. And as you know.
Well, I know that.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. You go back probably to the late 60s, early 70s, working for an irascible character named Stan Weston.
Well, I started with Stanley Weston in 1970, actually,
Right.
not in the 60s.
Okay, 1970.
Yeah, 1970. Stanley Weston was in the 60s. He's the guy who published and invented the original Wrestling Review and Boxing Illustrated magazines.
Yeah.
That was Stanley Weston. First wrestling magazine I ever bought was at Sunnyside Garden in Queens, New York in the early 60s. And it was the first issue of Wrestling Review with Eddie and Jerry Graham on the cover.
I remember that.
And I was so smitten with that magazine. I bought 2 of them. I begged my father for $1 so I could buy 2 copies. And one of them, I took all the color pictures and hung them up on my wall. And my friends would come into the house and say, "Why do you have guys on your wall? Are you like," I said, "No, they're my wrestlers."
Yeah.
I said, "I'd put Playboy on the other wall, but I don't have any room right now." So yeah, Mr. Weston, Stanley Weston, gave me my start in the mid 60s and into the late 60s. I was doing a radio show in New York on WHBI 105.9 FM, and I bought time, and I started doing wrestling interviews on there. Oscar Keneal and Mike Rosenberg, who are the promoters at Sunnyside Garden, were good enough to let me come down and do interviews. And once in a while, when I went to the matches to interview people, I take this little Instamatic camera with film. If you don't know what that is, everybody Google it. It was amazing. And once in a while, I'd run up to the ring and take a picture. And I sent Mr. Weston some of these pictures, and he wanted to know, how did you get in the dressing room? And how did you get those pictures? That's what he said. And that, I sent him a letter, email that, and
that's amazing. I've heard Stanley Weston was quite a character.
Define what you've heard, because I'm not sure what you've heard.
Well, I heard that he was kind of this this like New York character.
No. Mr. Weston.
Those stories.
Mr. Weston,
the story sounded so great. I wanted to believe it.
No, it's very true. That was Bert Sugar, probably, who eventually, with Lou Eskin, bought the magazines from Mr. Weston.
Sure.
Much later on. I mean, Bert Sugar was that colorful character.
Bert Sugar with a hat.
Right. And the cigar. Mr. Weston lived in Rockville Center, New York. He had an office originally on 42nd Street, but he was never that that boisterous New York guy. He loved being home with his family.
I want that story so much. I love those old characters. I knew a guy. You probably knew him too at some point, Bill. Joe Franklin.
Oh, Joe and I
worked for Joe.
Now listen. So you knew Rich, his sidekick there, Richard Ornstein.
Yes.
Okay.
Richie.
So if you go to YouTube, and you put in Bill Apter interviews Joe Franklin, and I also, when I started my radio show in the mid 60s in New York, I have an audio cassette somewhere in here where, hold on 1 minute. Hang on a minute. Don't go anywhere.
I'm right here.
Don't go anywhere. Joe Franklin was actually, here it is. Joe Franklin was actually my first guest. And he's on here. He's on here. He was my first guest. And Joe is a very dear friend. Joe is very good friends with Captain Lou Albano as well.
Oh, God, sure.
And no, Joe loved the wrestling business, and Joe would do anything for me. But if you worked for Joe, which you did, you'd call Joe, and he'd say, "Who is this?" I'd say, "Bill Apter." "Bill, you're a wonderful man. I love you. You're a wonderful man. Who is this?" And that was Joe. Joe was great.
Back in the day, Bill, I did a great Joe Franklin impression, and he would have me call people as him and cuss them out and cancel them off the show. the guy was such a ribber. He was such a character.
What I remember when he did his TV show, Memory Lane, it was always brought to you by Hoffman Beverages and Nuco, my friends.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Joe Franklin, my friends, welcome to the show.
That's
I
great.
loved Joe. He was great. So let's talk about, it's funny. You told a story just a moment ago about hanging your wrestlers on the wall. I did that as well.
You got it behind you. You're still doing it.
Yeah, now I do it, virtually. But when I used to hang the pictures on the wall, my father, thought I was a little strange. He actually went out. My father, at the age when I was 13, 14 years old, bought me a Playboy magazine and said, "Here, hang these up."
My father did that to me too. So it was bad because I only hung up the Playboy interviews, not the.
So let's get into what's going on. I want to ask you your thoughts because you know what, Bill? Honest to God, there are as many opinions as there are people you ask. The empty arena era that we're in, I've got to ask, what do you think of it?
Well,
what's going on?
It was the first few times I watched it, it was very, I don't know, unexpected. It was different, but I saw a lot of guys missing a lot of moves and reacting to the moves that they missed.
Yeah.
However, now that they've gotten quite a few shows under their wing, both WWE and AEW, I've accepted what it's become. And it's one of the few mostly live things you can watch on TV that is athletically an athletic sport as well as entertaining. And the other thing is, though, it's forced, like the WWE at least, to do new things, because if you saw what they did with The Undertaker and AJ Styles, it was like a cinematic gem. The thing that they just did with The Undertaker, the series that they're doing with him, it's making the WWE go into a different mode that's even more creative. So no, I'm used to it at this point.
Well, I guess the old adage, Bill, that necessity breeds invention is as true in wrestling as it is in any other walk of life. It's interesting, though.
Wait a second. Andy, stay in your room there. They think you're dead. Okay? Just stay in your room. I'm sorry.
That's another show we'll do. That's another one.
Good. But the empty arena, right? They're reinventing themselves in a lot of ways, and to get through, us wrestling fans, to get through this, why not let them, as long as their wrestlers are comfortable doing this and they're taking all the precautions that they can take, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they've committed themselves to putting on a product. I guess you make the best with what you got, but you know what? It's strange, Bill, to see people reacting to a crowd that's not there or selling to a crowd that's not there.
Right. Now, that's one thing that looks unusual to me, but they're not doing it as much as they did at the beginning.
Okay.
I think some of them are also, as much as I love the product, because I'm a fan of everything, you know that.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So, but sometimes when the girls open the show with three of them going back and forth, it's almost like a high school skit at the beginning of it with the girls. Yeah. But when they go into action, they're fabulous. They're amazing athletes. They really are.
Absolutely.
So you have to look past the no audience. My surprise was as great as the WWE production team is, and I know because I've been on their network and I've seen what they've done.
Oh, absolutely.
Studios, that they didn't put in a fake crowd. They could have done it if anybody.
I know.
They could have.
They have the audio tracks to pipe in crowd noises.
Yeah.
They could easily have done that. They could have done digitally amazing things
Sure.
with a, to make a building look like it was full.
Yeah, but we're getting comfortable with this now, I think.
I'm sorry, say again, you froze up for just a second.
I think we're getting comfortable with this.
Yeah.
With what it looks like now.
It's going to be interesting though. Will the crowds, when they do come back, react as they did before this pandemic? Will the wrestling fan just always be the wrestling fan, or will the mindset be changed now because of what they've expected to come to see?
Let me call all of them. Hold on.
Okay. Well, while Bill does that,
no, it's a great question that I have to give you, and I don't know.
Fair enough.
Do we know how long it's going to take for me to be sitting next to you in a wrestling arena? We're not sure. Are you comfortable sitting next to me, or vice versa? At that point, we don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you and I both know, Bill, that the wrestling fan is an entirely different animal.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
You say animal.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about where do we go from here? You and I have lived through the days of Bruno, who I know that you knew, and I knew Bruno very well. Sal Carenti, of course, who you know has been a guest on the show a couple of times.
My pal Sal.
Yeah. Our friend Davey O'Hannon, J.J. Dillon, our buddy the Boogeyman, they've all been here. This show is really an homage to old school.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's my way of keeping the business alive.
Well, then we have to do this, okay?
Yes, sir.
Let's do my Bruno imitation, but you have to ask me, Bruno, why do you hate Bobby Duncombe or Ken Patera? And I'll give you Bruno's stock answer to every opponent, okay? Go ahead.
Bruno, champ, you have a big match coming up at the Garden this Saturday night. There's a lot of animosity, champ, between you and Big Bob Duncombe.
Oh, wait, I gotta stop you. I'm sorry. You gotta ask me why I hate him.
Oh, I was getting there.
I'm using my word now. See that my whole.
Oh, I'm an interviewer. I got to build up the drama.
I'm being silly. Go ahead.
By the way, why do you hate Big Bob Duncombe?
Right. I'm sorry. Go. I interrupted you, and I apologize.
No problem. Bruno, why do you hate Big Bob Duncombe so much?
This Duncombe guy, I don't hate Duncombe, but I hold a lot of animosity toward him. That's why I had to cut you off, because he never said he hated anyone. He'd always say, this Ken Patera, he's the strongest man in the world, and doggone it, when you ask me, do I hate Ken Patera? I don't hate him, but I hold a high animosity toward him. He always.
Oh my God, I love that. You know what? That's how Bruno spoke. He did. If you've ever had lunch or dinner with Bruno and he got into telling stories, oh my God, I could listen to his stories all night long.
Yeah.
And one day, Bill, I'm going to have you take me up to Rico's in Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm nowhere near there. I'm near Philadelphia.
I know. I'll pay for the gas.
Well, if you eat at Rico's, you will get gas. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, I know.
But no, I would love to invite you from where you are, from your doorstep to where I am. It's 2 hours, and I'd love to have you as a guest at Apter's Alley when this is all over.
I would love to. You and I have a buddy who's actually appeared at Apter's Alley, and I thought he was actually going to tear up Apter's Alley. Oh. Our good mutual friend, the Metal Maniac, Jeff Miller.
Oh, yeah. He was, he was really, yes, great guy. And he's been down to Apter's Alley with way back when with the brother. He and the Superfly came down, and they spent a long time here, brother.
I miss Jimmy, brother. He was a good friend of mine. The last time I had Jimmy work for me at the Sands Hotel Casino, in Atlantic City. We did a show. I was the only promoter at the time who had a New Jersey casino license.
I was there. I was
Were
there.
you?
Yes, I was there.
You little shit.
I was there.
Yes. That was at the Sands Casino, and that was the last time Jimmy worked for me. Carol wouldn't let him work for me anymore because she got knocked off her chair by one of my boys named Slayer.
Okay.
And Jimmy thought it was a shoot, and I said, no, he was just the way he works. That's his character. He goes, I don't like it, brother. I don't like it, brother.
That's it. That's it. I don't like it. I don't show up anymore, brother. But it's beautiful in the TV Wonderland. Yes.
Yeah. But after a couple of beers, he was all good.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Beer and chicken wings. He loved his beer and wings, bro.
He loved to sing. He loved singing Elvis songs. But in my book, Is Wrestling Fixed?
I didn't know it was broken.
Thank you. But in my book, there's a whole chapter of Jimmy and I when we went to Japan and Hawaii together. Yeah, it was quite a time. Quite a time.
I actually have Jimmy's buddy, Phil LaRusso, come on the show.
I talk to him all the time. He's Uncle Phil.
Yeah.
I wish
Uncle
I had
Phil and Uncle Bill.
Yeah, and I wish I had his hair.
He has got the most beautiful head of beautiful silver white hair. Yes. He really does. And he's always cooking, and I don't know how the hell he's not 400 pounds right now.
I don't get that either.
I don't understand.
He's one of my favorite people. When you talk about genuinely nice people,
oh my God,
the wrestling business, he's in the top 5. He's in the top 2.
He is absolutely amazing. What a wonderful man. Wonderful guy.
Yes.
He'll be here. We're actually going to have him here June 16th, and we're going to talk about Jimmy and, the man behind the Superfly, because there was a lot there that people don't know about, and we're not going to touch Allentown, Pennsylvania. Not what, 1,000-foot pole, brother. I ain't going there.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. Don't want to, don't need to. He was my friend, and I want to remember him that way.
Sure.
Exactly that way.
There are a lot of wrestlers who have had legal issues and worse than that the way I want to remember them and the way I speak about them as a reporter is the professional side, not that private side.
Exactly. So what is next for the evolving life of Bill Apter? Because, brother, you don't stop. You're always doing something. You've got the Apter Chat, Apter's Alley, OneWrestling.com. You got all this stuff going on. When do you ever relax?
I don't. I have a full-time day job for the past 13 years where I work for a nonprofit agency called AHED, AHEDD.org. You can look it up. And,
yes, sir.
And the company's focus is to make sure that persons with various degrees of disabilities are able to get into competitive employment and be job coached by us to make them successful. So I do that all day, and I do the wrestling thing all day. And what's next, you never know. Periodically the WWE Network calls upon me.
Sure.
I'm contemplating, and this is a scoop, of opening up an online advisory site where if people want to talk to me for a half hour to help advise them on their career or broadcasting or whatever, there will be a way to get that done.
That's beautiful. I like that. I have to tell you a little bit of personal family trivia. My grandfather in South Philly was a bookie. He used to take numbers. His accountant was one Mr. Phil Zacco.
Wow.
That was his accountant. I grew up calling Phil Zacco Uncle Phil. And I spent my entire childhood at 45th and Market Street in Philly.
Okay.
And if anybody knows that address, it's the home of the old Philadelphia Arena.
Right.
You remember the arena. And why
I
don't
was
we have...
there. It's not there a lot. Remember, I lived in New York up until 35 years
Oh,
ago.
that's true.
I,
Yeah. Yeah.
my home arena was Madison Square Garden,
The
Sunnyside,
garden.
the Westchester County Center, Ridgewood Grove. Those were my.
Right.
I went to Philly maybe once or twice a year.
Bill, was the Nassau Coliseum up at the time?
Yeah, not when I first started my career, but that was
Right.
another one of the places when I lived on Long Island.
Long Island. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, Long Island. When I lived on Long Island, that was one of my regular stops. Yeah.
Oh, man. What happened to the great wrestling venues? I missed the old wrestling buildings.
I do too, especially when they took down the Sportatorium in Dallas. And
Oh, man.
I remember when I was a kid, my dad, you weren't allowed to go to wrestling in New York unless you were 13 or over. And my dad knew a state athletic commissioner. And we used to go to the Garden when I was 10 or 11 years old and sit at the top of the old Garden before the one on 34th Street. This was on the building where Ring Magazine was on 51st and 8th or 50th and 8th.
Yeah.
And somewhere in my basement, I have 8mm movies of highlights of Buddy Rogers.
Oh, my God.
I don't know where those things are. But
Another one of my friends, Buddy Rogers.
I'm a New Yorker living in the Philly burbs.
Yeah, my father actually bought Buddy's bar.
Wow.
In Camden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was another one of my first imitations. See, Ray Morgan, the broadcaster, would say, Buddy, Friday night you're wrestling Antonino Rocca. And Buddy said, you know something, pal? This guy Rocca might have it in the body, but he doesn't have it here. And now you're going to remember this. In the past few years, I have been in contact with his manager, Bobby Davis. Do you remember Bobby Davis? He lives in Texas, and he's probably in his early 80s.
Yeah.
And and he called once in a while when he and I talk, we always exchange our Buddy imitations.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what? Buddy was a character. He really was. He was another one of those guys that always had like a short stogie in his mouth, chomping on a cigar. Never lit it, but he always chomped on it.
Right, and everybody was Pally. Called everybody
Pally.
Pally.
I loved it. He was a wonderful man to me. He really was.
I have online on YouTube just a few minutes of it, but I did in 1979. I did an entire cassette 1-hour interview with Buddy about his whole life, or an hour and a half interview. Parts of it are on onewrestlingvideo.com.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Bill, I could go another 3 hours with you, but I know we're committed to doing 30 minutes, and we're going to honor that. But, we got somebody coming in here. Hold on here. What we got going? Somebody's trying to join us here. Oh, wow.
If it's Vince McMahon, I got to get out of
here. Yeah. No, it's the picture looked like Hulk Hogan, though. But yeah, the picture looked like Hulk.
If Hulk came on here, there's only one thing he would say. Do you know what that is? What you gonna do, brother? And Angelo and Apter run all over you.
Oh, here he is. Here he is.
Oh,
Wild Bill Apter.
What
you gonna do, brother? Now the Randomania's finally caught up with you.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. All the maniacs are watching both of us on the show, and they're going to want to know who's got more hair, who's got less hair.
I ain't showing. Because you always see me with a top on here. Okay?
I saw him. I saw
you grew a beard like I used to have, okay? And you shaved it off. You're looking kind of semi-clean right now, okay? But, since I spoke to you at the big event, I've been chasing you all over the country, brother, just trying to catch up with you. And of all things, here I am with you on Wrestling with the Future, man. Look, I got Bill Apter, I got Angelo DeCipio, two icons together, man. I am so stoked right now, I could just pee my pants.
Well, Hulkster, I got to ask you a question, Hulkster.
All right, brother.
What's he going to do, brother, when Aptermania runs wild on you?
Well, let me tell you, Angelo. Big, wild Bill. Bill is a scary man now. Bill looks like he's a frail little guy that goes up with a microphone, but I know for a fact he would just as soon flex, smack you over the head with that microphone, or put it somewhere that it shouldn't be. So I'm afraid of Bill Apter. He's my idol. He's an icon. He's the best journalist that the world has ever known, but he scares me a little bit.
Baby,
Oh, man.
baby, Wonderful Willie still has the 6-second figure 4 leg lock, if you will. He can still put anyone in the figure 4 leg lock 6 seconds. So next time you and I go face to face at any event, a big event, a small event, you better watch out for Wonderful Willie and all his beautiful babies, if you will.
You know, it sounds to me like you also got the bionic elbow, okay? One of these things. Yeah, right there. Uh-huh.
Oh, wait, I did.
Down on me? No. Don't make me drop the leg. I'm afraid I couldn't get up in these days.
No, you definitely.
Man.
I need. You and I talked. I
Yes,
need
sir.
you to IM me on Facebook and let me
Yes.
have your contact information so I can put you on. I can have the Hulkster on the after chat.
You got it, brother.
Wonderful.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you, Bill.
The pleasure of being here. And I didn't know we had so many great people that we knew. Joe Franklin.
Oh my
you
God.
probably-
Sure.
You probably knew Soupy Sales then too.
I actually did know Soupy Sales, and actually, funny you should say that. We've got a show, June 23rd, Old Hollywood. It's a tribute to the 1960s and 70s television shows, and we're going to have memorabilia from the Soupy Sales show,
Wow.
Batman. Yeah, check this out. The
Don't
Soupy
kiss that
Sales
dude.
show, Batman. The original Lone Ranger serial back
Clayton
in
Moore.
the 50s. And we have a guy who owns the entire original set of the Honeymooners.
Wow.
Is coming up.
I will tune in. I will tune in for that. For
I
sure.
think you would love this. This is like right up our alley.
So now wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the two of you, and then I'll tell you mine since we're discussing this, and then I have to get out of here. I have to drive Andy to the train station. What was your favorite TV show of that era?
Batman, hands down.
Rin
What
Tin
about
Tin.
you?
Rin
What
Tin
was
Tin.
your that was a great show. You know what mine was? The Fugitive.
Oh yeah,
David Jansen.
That was
David
my favorite show.
Jansen, one-armed man.
You know, they always asked him, somebody would recognize him, and they'd say, his name was Richard Kimball, the character, and they'd say to him, I know you. What's your name? And he'd go, Lincoln, Joe Lincoln. They said, no. You're that Kimball guy, and you killed your wife. And he always had the same line. He'd always say, well, if it's any consolation to you, I didn't kill her. He always said that every episode.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to watch that show.
I'll tell
Thank
you what,
you.
Bill, thank you so much. I gotta have you back on. I really do.
I would love to do this. And Hulkster, you and I are going to get together one day and do that after chat. Oh, yeah.
Ooh, Macho 2.0 mega powers. Me and you, baby.
Oh, by the way, Bill, Lanny
Yes.
Poffo is the reason you're here tonight.
Thank you. That's why I brought Randy up just now.
Yeah. And Lanny says hi. And also Barb Goodish says, give Bill a big social distance hug. So there you go.
Thank you. Barbara Goodish, I knew Bruiser Brody so
Oh, gosh.
very well.
Sure.
I was at their house. I went to Japan with him. Just He was one of my closest friends. And same thing with Lanny Poffo.
Yeah.
I was the guy who got he and Randy to stage that match in Memphis just for the Pro Wrestling Illustrated cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Lanny.
Yeah,
He's
we
great.
we're saluting the wrestling wives. We're doing a special show with Barb Goodish, Karen McDaniel, who's been on the show
Oh,
three
I
times.
love.
I love Karen. Isn't she wonderful?
Tell her I said hello.
I
See, I
will.
can't do any salute shows because the last time I did that, I knocked myself out.
And there will be a surprise wrestling wife on that show. I'm not legally obligated to announce it just yet.
I know who it is. She's here right now. She's right here. Geraldine. Hey, Geraldine, are you going to be on that show? You better cut that out, honey. Don't tell them this is supposed to be a surprise. Okay, I'm sorry. I know it's a surprise.
I love it.
All right. Thank
Never a dull moment at the Apter house.
I'm telling you. But
Bill, thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bill Apter, everybody.
I had a great time, and I'll see you at the matches eventually.
Eventually. All right, Bill. Take care. Have a great night, brother.
Nice to see you as well, my friend.
Bill, it's always my honor to see you, sir. Talk to you.
My honor too. So make sure you're one of you gets me his number. So when I do,
absolutely.
These days we'll do that.
You got it.
You're terrific, by the way. I love your interview style. You've got that great old school radio interview style. Did you know Ray Dariano as well?
I know that. Why do I know that name? I don't.
He did a show on NBC with Soupy. He was Soupy's co-host on the radio show.
That's why I know the name. Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Wonderful.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Take care. The great Bill Apter, everybody. Bye-bye. Wow. What an amazing interview. I got to have him back. Well, you know, brother. How you doing? You are looking good tonight.
I am doing good. I am feeling good. I'm ready for whatever happens.
Let me show you how much I respect Bill Apter. Okay? I'm a smoker. I've been holding on to this cigarette for 30 minutes already and won't light it because I don't want him to holler at me.
Well, I might holler at you too.
Yeah, but I can take you.
Yeah, you probably could, brother.
There we go.
Bill, I met Bill about 32 years ago.
Right.
Doing a TV taping, and he got me aside and did an interview, took some pictures of me and Jimmy Cornette. Put it in Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and it really got things started.
Well, let's talk about that. You know, I was looking at Randy. Oh, by the way, everybody, this gentleman is known nationally and internationally, quite frankly, as the world's #1 Hulk Hogan impersonator, Randy Hogan. Everybody, Randy, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about this. Have you always bore a striking resemblance to Terry?
Yes, I absolutely did. The only
and when was the first time somebody said to you, hey, dude, you look like Hulk Hogan?
I was wrestling in a match up in North Georgia at a little bar and went to see a friend of mine wrestling. Had no intention of being in the ring myself. But you always take your gear with you. And somebody didn't show up, and he says, you want to wrestle? And I said, sure. So I was Randy Franklin at the time. Brown, always had the mustache, always had the hair.
Yeah.
And he said, he says, you look like Hulk Hogan. So we're going to call you Hal Hogan. And I said, wait a minute. Hal Hogan. I don't know who they're talking about. How about Randy Hogan? He said, okay, from now on, you're Randy Hogan. So I went home all excited. Now, I only had about 5 or 6 matches in my life. Went home, bleached my hair, bleached the mustache, bleached out the eyebrows, and that's how Randy Hogan got started.
Just that simple.
Just that simple.
That's amazing.
A little promoter in a little shot in a beer bar, probably 30 drunk guys sitting at the bar, and he said, you look like Hulk Hogan, so we're going to call you Randy.
That's great. You know what? It's funny because that's how people don't understand that you never know who's going to show up at any given time in any place. You never know if there's an agent, a scout, somebody that's connected that can do something for you. Here you are in a little shot and beer joint, and a guy says, "Hey, we can do something with you." That's remarkable, man. That's really remarkable. So you mentioned that you wrestled. How long have you been wrestling, and what names, other than obviously other than Randy Hogan, did you wrestle under previously?
Well, I had a Randy Franklin. Pretty much always was Randy Hogan. You know, a couple of names here every once in a while. You know, I put on a mask somewhere or whatever else. So, but basically, I did it pretty much full time for about 15 years.
Right.
And always did the Randy Hogan thing. So,
did you ever spend time in Philadelphia?
No, I did not.
Okay, I'm asking for a very specific reason. There was a Hulk lookalike in Philadelphia. I don't know if you heard the story, that caused quite a bit of a stir at a match. And it's so much to the point where they asked him to leave.
Whoa.
Yeah. I've never seen this guy before or since, quite frankly. But, brother, you look like Hulk. This guy was Hulk. I've never seen anybody look that much. The face, the body, the hair. It was scary. To your knowledge, you know, in wrestling, there are, you know, macho lookalikes, Hulk lookalikes. I know that you know Brandon Savage. That's the Randy Savage. Yeah. It's like kind of like the Elvis impersonators of the wrestling market. You know, there's guys, you know, emulating their heroes. Mm-hmm. Some of them making a living, some of them are really bad, and some are like yourself are really, really good. Is that been for you a hindrance, or has it been a plus for you over the years to look like Hulk?
It has been a complete plus. You know, it's funny. A lot of these guys don't wrestle, never wrestled. Okay.
Yeah.
I did wrestle. A lot of similarities with me. I never said I was Hulk Hogan or Hulk's brother or his nephew or his cousin or his uncle or anything else that I've been called through the years, you know?
Yeah.
I always wrestled as Randy Hogan, as my own entity.
Yeah.
But like I said, a lot of Brandon, for instance, you know, he's done a lot of the macho stuff. You know, there's a couple of them out there that are great.
Yeah.
But I think it helped me when I got up and started working with WCW when the wars were going on. You know,
yeah,
Hulk was coming up as an enhancement person, okay, or a jobber or a carpenter or whatever you wanted to call me. Okay.
Sure.
As one of those guys and having the Hogan look, first of all, they didn't want me to change my name. They wanted me to stay as Hogan.
Yeah.
And they squashed me by the biggest and best that they had week after week. And I think it was a ploy against, well, here's what we do to Hogans, you know. You think the Hogans are so big and bad, we'll show you. So I think it was more of a thing between Ted Turner and Vince McMahon, Hogan versus Hogan type of thing. But you know, like they say in the business in our end, you know, pin me, pay me, you know.
Exactly.
And they did. So we did that, and they would make comments once in a while. Jimmy Cornette was doing commentary in one of my matches.
Yeah.
And he said something to the effect that he said, "Well, I bet he wishes his big brother was here now." You know, alluding to like Hulk was my big brother.
Yeah.
And so everybody in the media, everybody started picking up on that. Oh, here's Hulk's little brother and everything. So.
Yeah. Well, I was asking because sometimes looking too much like somebody can get you some heat. And I'm wondering if your look ever got you any heat with anyone, whether it was the boys or whether it was fans or whatever the case may have been.
Of course, they ridicule you. I mean, he's 6'7", you know, and I'm a 6 foot. You know, he's muscled up 300 pounds. You know, I'm trying to push it 230. A lot of differences. So I would get harassment like that, verbal stuff.
Yeah.
But never anything really negative. It was embraced because the thing is, back in the day, old school stuff, I was on TV every week. sometimes 2 or 3 times. I'd be on the main event, and then I'd be in some other super station, and then I worked for Continental out of Atlanta with Ron and Robert Fuller and that was playing on TV at the time. So all they knew was, well, here's Randy Hogan in our little high school gym on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Wow, he was on TV. So it kind of makes you like a TV star.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how it grows up, you know. Now they can
sure.
say I was on Hogan's coattails or whatever. And if I did an impersonation and pushed myself off that way, it would be different. But
oh, absolutely. Well, let's talk about Hulk for a second. He obviously knows of you, right?
Yes, he does.
You guys have met, I'm sure, at some point?
We have never spoken.
Really?
The first time
I am actually surprised by that, Randy. I'll be honest with you. I'm really surprised.
Well, we never crossed paths, even though he lives about an hour from me and everything. I've been to his shops. I've been to the beach. I've been to his bars, his restaurants, and everything else. We just never come. The closest I came was when he jumped to WCW, and they had a ticker tape parade at Disney World.
Oh, yeah. I know the guy that was driving the car, J.J. McGuire.
Well, if you old tapes, I was there. I was working, had a little wrestling show on a radio station at the time.
Right.
So they sent me as a reporter. So here I was pretty much in the front as a reporter watching it. Him and Jimmy Hart were up on the stage and everything.
Yeah.
And he looked down at me and just kind of nodded and winked. That was it. It's like,
wow,
he recognized me, I guess, and that was it. Only when I went to the big event in November, in this past March, for the first time, Jimmy Hart was right across the aisle from me.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit nervous because, you know, him and Hulk talk every day. I mean, they are best friends, legit business partners, best friends, and everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to get a picture with him. I said, Jimmy, would you mind if I got a picture with you and everything?
Yeah.
He says, oh, not a bit, not a bit. And I of course, I thanked him very humbly and everything, and told him I appreciate it. He says, you know, he says, I talk to Terry just about every day, you know, and you have come up and everything. And he said, we really appreciate what you're doing, keeping the Hogan thing up there, you know, keeping your nose clean, no scandals, no nothing like that. You know, he said, you're doing great. He said, I love the outfit because I was all gimmicked out. And just that little thing from Jimmy saying, hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
It almost brought tears to my eyes after all these years.
So you got his seal of approval.
I did.
That's great, man. That's amazing. It just blows my mind here, you know, looking at you and talking to you, thinking to myself, you never met the guy. That's just amazing.
That's my bucket list.
Amazing. Isn't that crazy? That's just crazy.
He's one place out. And, you know, I started doing, you know, conventions and that. And of course, he doesn't do those.
Yeah.
Step at his little shop and everything. So maybe one day.
Well, you never look. It's like, what do they say in wrestling? Never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never.
It always comes around.
Oh man.
I tell you, I'm having more fun now than when I actively wrestled.
Well, I was going to say, you're really in demand. Yeah, you're really in demand, it seems. You know, you're doing, you know, a number of podcasts, you know, of course, my own podcast. You've been with our friends Monty and the Pharaoh.
Absolutely.
Great guys. You've done a number of conventions. You know, how do you, let's talk about the convention circuit because I'm actually booked for a couple. How do you come across on the convention circuit? Are people receptive to you?
Yes, I could not believe how much, I hate to say how much love I got, okay? But how much positive reinforcement I got at the events. It's a big event, and then the one in Albany, which was the next day.
Right.
Just people, they come up, they want to talk, they want to get pictures, you know, they want to buy merchandise or whatever else. And I'm thinking, God, me, I never got this attention when I wrestled. You know, all of a sudden, I think there's a resurgence. Everybody wants to see the old guys now.
Yeah, you know what? That's funny you say that. Because before you joined us, It's funny that you say that because just before you joined us, Bill Apter and I were exactly talking about that, the nostalgia factor. You know, they want the Hulks back. They want the Randy's Savages back. They want Steve Austin back. Even, you know, the Warrior for crying out loud, you know?
Sure.
These old characters. So let's talk about that. Where do you stand on the lack of characters in wrestling, Randy?
Oh, well, I guess you have to look at how the business has changed, you know, from what it was.
Right.
When it started, you had this big blonde guy, and we'll stick with the Hogan thing, you know,
Yeah.
coming up, and you had the Iranian champion, and then you had the All-American blonde-haired surfer-looking dude come in, win it, and everything else. Okay.
Yeah.
From that, it carried on. Now, cartoons on TV.
Yeah.
You know, so you went from that, you went to other characters, and
Yeah.
then you've always had silly little gimmicks going on, but more and more. I think that got homogenized so much through the years that now, well, you've got like the Fiend, okay, and of course the Undertaker, which is old school, so he don't count. But new
Right.
guys like the Fiend and that really have something to offer the old school fans, because
Exactly.
now, if you think about it, in the old days, and I'm talking about when I was young, Dick the Bruiser,
Sure.
the Crusher guys, San Martino even.
Oh,
They were
sure.
big, barrel-chested guys. They weren't bodybuilders, you know. Then you had the next group coming in. You know, you had one or two, but then you had the Lugers, and you look on TV now, and they're all muscled-up bodybuilders, you know.
Yeah.
The women are all pretty, with the exception of maybe a handful, are all models. So it's the eye
Yeah.
candy. So the things have changed so much that,
You know, it's interesting because, and what you're saying, it's almost as if Randy, it's almost as if you listened to my last show, because this is exactly what we were talking about.
really,
I'm telling you, and I mentioned Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher and Bulldog Brower, these barrel-chested guys. And I said, the question I asked my guest, who, by the way, was Lanny Poffo, I said, Lanny, what happened to the way wrestlers looked? We grew up, you know, perceiving wrestlers being these larger than life, you know, amazing guys. I'll give you a perfect example. You brought up the guy's name, Dick the Bruiser, okay, the Crusher. They weren't huge guys, but they had enormous personalities, Randy.
yes, they did.
What happened to that? Brother, tell me what happened to that.
Well, back then, of course, nothing was scripted. They just went to it. Personality, okay?
Exactly.
If you had, and look at, realistically, Hulk Hogan, technically, if you watch his Japan matches, he can wrestle. Basically, over here, he didn't do a lot of wrestling.
No.
He really didn't. But he had the personality. He sold tickets. He put butts in the seats. That's what's
Exactly.
important. It's more and more of a business now. I think than it was before. Before, you saw, like you said, the Dick the Bruisers and that. You wouldn't mess with them in a bar.
Oh,
You go
God,
in a
no.
bar now, and you might be sitting next to a guy, a pro wrestler, say a Finn Balor or Jack Gallagher, weighs 167 pounds. You know,
Randy, you could sit next to a wrestler in a bar these days and never know he's a wrestler.
absolutely. Not in the old days.
No.
In the old days, you'd see their heads all carved up, you know, and they'd be big, and they were always in character. They were always
Oh my
gimmick.
God,
They
yeah.
never broke kayfabe. They never broke character.
Yeah.
You don't
That's
see
funny
that
because
anymore.
when Bill Apter was on with me just a few minutes ago, I called him at the beginning of the introduction. I called him the gatekeeper of kayfabe. That's a term that I copyrighted.
Mhm.
And so I want to talk to you about that lost little gem that we call kayfabe. I grew up in the kayfabe generation. I've been in this business 48 years. Okay, that's a long time, and in it 48 years. And I ran shows, and one thing that I always told my guys, when any of the boys that worked for me, What you do here, you do out there. They think that this is who you are. Let them believe it. What happened to that? Where did that go?
The internet.
Ah, okay. Talk to me, brother.
Okay. In the old days, you didn't know. You had to remember the sheets come out. The Observer, and they had all kinds of the sheets that you had to subscribe to, and you get once in a month in the mail. You know, most of that was results and stuff. But now you can see everything. I guess a lot of it had started, I don't know, way back when, but I remember Eddie Mansfield going on 60 Minutes.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And they jumped all over him for exposing and everything else. But
that was brutal.
Brutal. Everything is out there now, though. Everything. And I think that's where it started. I think if kayfabe, and it happens starts with the boys, okay?
Sure.
If the younger guys in that, if you keep your mouth shut, and you stay in character, whether it's a heel or a baby, whatever it is, if you're in a grocery store, it's tough, but if you're a big heel and a little kid comes up to you for an autograph, get away from me, kid. You got to do that. That's why, because they're going to pay for the Bobo Brazils to come in, okay, and whip your butt. Mom and Dad, take me. I want to see him get beat up. It don't happen no more. That's the problem. I think everybody can go on the internet and find out everything about the business.
Let me ask you a question. What do you make of this term smart mark? What does that mean?
Smart mark is somebody that kind of knows what's going on, and they think they know even more than what's going on.
Go ahead.
And they want everybody to know that they know everything that's going on.
Preach it, brother.
Yes. So they will tear guys down, build guys up, keyboard warriors, they call them, or whatever else. That's terrible. Yeah. And I go through it now. Even I'll go on Facebook once in a while, and there's goes every 6 months comes out just a picture of me in the ring and that, and it says, when you can't get the name brand and you got to go get the generic brand or something stupid like that.
Yeah, right.
But they're talking about me. Here I am, pushing 70 years old.
Tell you what, brother.
There you go, pushing 70.
Yeah.
But I can still remember everything. Remember the old days, and until I start dribbling down my chin and forget, I'm going to preach it. And I'm going to tell it like it is,
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing, I asked Lanny when he was on the show with me, and I even asked Magnum TA when he was on with me 2 weeks ago. I said, how protected were you guys? And I asked Magnum, I said, how protected were you guys when you went out in public, when you went into a restaurant or a bar, and Magnum said, if we ever broke kayfabe and it got back to the promoter, we were done. Done. Out.
Absolutely.
He said, we were out. And I asked Lanny the same thing, and he said, by the time he came along, nobody really cared because everybody was right. It was exactly what you were saying with the dirt sheets when they were just coming out and people were starting to get like wise to what was happening. They were becoming, I hate this term, but smartened up to the biz.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Smartened up to the biz. I mean, and I get in trouble for this because, first of all, I'm Italian and I got a big mouth. Number two, I don't hold back. And my contention, Randy, has always been, if you're smart, you're not a mark. And if you're a mark, you're not smart. So it just befuddles me when I hear the term smart mark.
Mm-hmm.
And I shake my head and go, what the hell does that even mean? Like, and everybody thinks today, and I really want to hear what you think about this, but everybody thinks today that they're an expert on the business. They all know what's best for the business. They're all, fantasy booking matches,
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear what you think about this. You know, the so-called armchair quarterbacks, Randy.
That's the problem. 99.9% of them have never been in a ring. And I don't care how smart you think you are or how much you know the inside information on what goes on and is it fake, which, you know, nobody wants to hear that fake stuff because it's not fake. When you go over the top rope and you're on a cement floor, you hit the cement floor. You know, when you land on your head, you land on your head. When you don't protect yourself and your head goes into a steel turnbuckle, it opens you up.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all done that. These guys don't know that. They just think it's all playing games and acting. And we go in and we rehearse the matches hours ahead of time and everything else. Again, back in the day, there were times when the first time you ever saw your opponent was in the ring.
Yeah.
You're not backstage talking about nothing else. You know, there's certain things that you know and everything else. And that's where training comes in.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Oh,
back then,
boy,
it was like magicians back then. It was a closed thing. You didn't know. You may think it's all fake, but you didn't really know. That's how I got into it.
Because you didn't know how the trick was done.
That's right.
You know, here's the thing. You said something very important, really important. When they started to pull back the veil and let people peek behind the curtain, they gave it away. It was like the Wizard of Oz. When you found out when you found out that the wizard wasn't a wizard, but he was a guy behind the curtain pulling all the gadgets, you know, you were let down. And I think our generation is saddened by that, but it seems to me that the new breed of kids, I'm going to call them kids, because that's what they are. You know, they like knowing, they like knowing how the wizard does his deal. Mm-hmm. I got a problem with that because, guys for years and years, bled and suffered and broke their bones protecting kayfabe and, and making it look believable and suspension of disbelief, which you don't even hear that term anymore. The other thing is guys now, and I really want to hear what you think about this. I'll tell you what I think, but it doesn't really matter what I think because nobody's going to listen anyway.
I'll listen.
But I'm not a big fan of, calling spots backstage. I'm old school. Call it in a ring. Talk to me about that. What happened to that lost art?
Now, where that got started, like you, I have my own opinions on it, okay? I agree. I never worked a match out, okay? The only thing you knew is maybe an opening spot, how long you had, who's going over, and what the finish is. That's it. The
finish, exactly.
That's it. But, you got to go back further than that because it comes to training. Now, back in our day, anybody couldn't become a wrestler. Now you can go to any storefront and there's somebody going to train you in the backyard or in the gym. Now there are some reputable schools out there that teach you. Most of what they teach you touches on, if not completely, the old school ways.
Yeah.
Kayfabe, the mat wrestling. Right now, how many high spots do you see in a match? 100. How many finishing maneuvers are done,
Yeah.
In the old days, anybody who did anything off the top rope, crossbody or something, that's a finish. Now you don't see that. Now they're kicking out.
No, and I'll tell you what, you hit on something so important. In fact, tonight we were supposed to have on Danny Cage, the owner of the Monster Factory. But at the last he canceled out at the last minute. But I knew the owner of the Monster Factory previously, Larry Sharp, the guy who started the Monster Factory. And I think that the one thing that you nailed it, you put your finger right on the pulse of it, is the lack of really good training. That anybody who buys a pair of tights and boots can call themselves a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they see these things on TV and they go, oh, I can do that. Okay, let's see how long you'll last. Will you live to be 30? Will you be able to walk when you're 35?
Mm-hmm.
Will you remember your name when you're 40? Probably not.
That's it.
And that's the problem. Go ahead.
Well, even starting out old school again, you had to love the passion. You had to have a real passion for the business, okay? Because then you wanted to study the history, and through the history, you learned. It's just like in school. You got to take history, whether you like it or not, but you learn things by it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you're in there for 3 or 4 weeks. You learn how to lock up and maybe take a bump, certainly not safely, and you're in a match. I trained for 13 months before I had my first match.
Wow.
And even then, I had about 2 spots in it. I was thrilled to death. But old school, they don't just teach you.
Yeah.
The first week, you're doing nothing but locking up. You got to learn how to fall backwards, how to fall forward. You know, another thing I don't understand nowadays is when I was back in my era, when we were taught, we learned it's safer. They say a backdrop.
Yeah.
It's safer to get up in the air, get yourself over, and land flat.
You sure?
I see so many guys now, not necessarily in that hole, but everybody's rolling. They're all rolling. You know, judo style. In the old days, it was get up high, fall down flat and solid, boom, making noise, you know. Now there's so much rolling. When you went up and that ring snapped, you know, people said, wow, that must have hurt. You don't say that no more, where the guy just rolls corner to corner and comes back with 3 drop kicks and 2 missed clotheslines and a drop down. And
here's the funny thing about that. And you'll appreciate it having been in the ring. Here's the funny thing about that. They're getting hurt more now rolling than they would if they took, you know, a flat back bump. Problem is,
I would imagine,
they don't know how to work. The art of the work is missing. You know, I can take a guy and teach him how to bump. I can teach him how to run the ropes. I can teach him how to do a hip toss, arm drag, leapfrog. The standard maneuver, right? It's all basic stuff. You know that, right?
Yep.
But I can't teach him personality. I can't teach him who to be. He has to find that himself. The biggest problem is you've got, like you said, guys that aren't trained. But the other thing is you got guys with no personalities.
That's right. And the day of the manager is pretty much over, you know. I mean, you got Lesnar, who's marginal, but you got a Paul Heyman. You had a Jimmy Cornette for the Bobby Eatons.
Stop, brother. I'm going to stop you right there. I want you to, because I'm going to let you go on it. I want you to stop right there, and I want people to listen to what the hell you're talking about. Because, brother, that's something I feel super passionate about.
Yes.
The old-fashioned mouthpiece, the manager as a distraction, as a part of the match, as the mouthpiece of the match. People don't get it. It's not just some guy that walks you to the ring. The greatest manager, in my opinion, in the history of wrestling, the Grand Wizard, Ernie Roth.
Abdul Farouk. Yep, he had the Sheik. I was raised back in Detroit, and it was him and the Sheik all the way.
Talk to these people. Preach to them, brother. Tell them what's missing. Talk to me about managers. And give me some examples of, like, your favorite guys.
Well, as you mentioned it, Ernie Roth, he was the great. Bobby Heenan, to me, Bobby Heenan could do it all. He could talk, he could bump, he could wrestle. J.J. Dillon didn't do a whole lot of it, but they don't know. He was an accomplished wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
He got into it. And he was always, to this very day, conducts himself very businesslike. He
very
had the
much
horsemen
so.
That were businesslike, wearing suits, styling and profiling. It was a certain image that the manager projected.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Thank you, Randy, for saying that. Because the problem is there's no mystique. JJ, who, by the way, has been on the show before, is one of our favorite people here. But JJ presented that mystique, the businessman, the shrewd businessman behind the Four Horsemen, the guy that pulled the strings. You had four guys who could all talk, but you had JJ that put the bow on it.
That's it.
It made it a nice little package. Go ahead, talk to me.
And it really worked too. And then you had the quieter ones that I never understood. Again, being in Detroit and then down the coast in Florida, and most of my work in the South, I wasn't raised on the WWF and all that. I knew of them because I was a fan. I knew of the San Martinos and Pedro Morales and all those guys, okay?
Yeah.
What I never understood was the Arnold Skoland. He was always pretty laid back, everything. I guess he wrestled too, but laid back type. And then you got Jimmy Hart, who didn't do a whole lot, except he ran around like a hamster on crack,
exactly
all the time. And he was fun to watch. People just wanted the good guy to get a hold of him. And they would chase him in the ring, under the ring, around the ring, and everything else.
Exactly. He was fun to watch. That's the secret right there. Yeah. He was fun to watch. He could, and Jimmy, he had that high squealy voice. He still does too, by the way.
He still does, yeah.
But he made that work for him. And then you had guys on the other side of the coin, guys like Skandar Akbar. In World Class, you had guys like, oh my God. Oh, geez. Oh, even somebody like a modern day manager like Slick back in his day.
Yeah.
All right. But they knew how to work. You talked about growing up in and watching wrestling in Florida. You can't talk about Florida without talking about the famous Graham family, Eddie and Mike.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about Eddie and Mike Graham.
Eddie, I didn't know that well. Mike Graham, I knew extremely well. I worked with him. I worked for him. I worked against him. I worked with him. Mike was behind the scenes up in WCW for a while, or I guess maybe before that when it was Crockett's NWA. See, I was there in the transition, and in that immediate transition, I kind of forget which side of the fence I'm on. Is it NWA now, or is it Ted Turner in WCW?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that transition was very good too. But you had guys like him, and of course his best buddy Steve Kern, who's still up, up in Connecticut, up in WWE. But they ran solid shows.
Yeah.
Kayfabe, you had Dusty Rhodes down here, and a lot of them lived down here, and a lot of them still live down here.
Yeah.
You got Lonnie, and I'm in the Orlando area, and they're in the Tampa area, which is just about an hour, maybe hour and a half away.
Right.
But, they got the Papos over there. You got John Cena over there. Some of the big guys now down the street from me here. You got Bill DeMott, Hugh Morris.
Yeah, sure. Great trainer, by the way.
Absolutely.
And I don't care what, and let's talk about Bill for a minute, because Bill has been eviscerated in the media. Man, they beat this guy to death in the media. Terrible. But I want to tell you what, you don't get any better trainer than Bill DeMott. This guy was stern. Yes, absolutely. Was he fair? Absolutely. Was he good at what he did? The best. They didn't appreciate it because, I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings. This. That. You know what? Grow a set, will you?
Crybabies.
Exactly. Grow a set.
When I was in, and I was pretty solid when WCW took over from Crockett, NWA. They fired a lot of the guys because they wanted guys now that could work. Even though you were going down, if the occasion rose, especially at a house show, they wanted somebody who could work, not just somebody to get squashed all the time.
Yeah.
So it was almost like an audition type thing. There was guys like me and George South and
sure.
A couple of them. George is still great. Another good trainer.
I love George South. He's an amazing guy.
He is. And we traveled together, him and I, all the time,
Oh, you ran the roads?
Let me tell you.
You ran the roads with George? I would love to hear them stories.
Me and George, George was always a very straight guy. He really was. He plays a great heel, but we'd be driving, me and Gary Royal and Italian Stallion guy. We'd drive from Atlanta up to Detroit, 4 of us in a Ford Escort, going and staying at a Motel 6, taking the mattress off of the box springs and flipping to see who gets what. Those are true stories. You hear old guys talk about those days, okay? Bill DeMott remembers that.
I love it.
He remembers that. Now, and one thing that kept us working all the time, I was getting to, you never complained. I mean, if somebody was stiff with you, no matter what, was mean, and I got stories of that stuff too, you always thanked them after the match.
Absolutely.
Always. You didn't complain, because if you bitched or complained, you were out of there.
Oh,
They didn't
sure.
use you anymore. So many guys, you'd see them one time, and they were gone.
Yeah.
Crybabies. And that's what happened with Bill DeMott. He's teaching them toughness, the business side of it, the realism, the toughness. And the little crybaby said, oh, he's being too hard on us.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm fascinated with Eddie and Mike Graham. Mike, and sadly, either one of them are with us anymore.
Right.
And sadly, both of them left this world the same way, unfortunately. Mike Graham was kind of, they say, a chip off the old block, that he had a head for finishes and psychology like that was second to none.
Yes.
I mean, did he really learn from his father, or did he have an insight on his own? Because you knew this guy.
I would imagine that a lot of it came from his father, but a lot of it comes from his surroundings. They would have cookouts, and they'd have all the top guys there. They'd have the Dusties and Kevin Sullivan or Tarzan Tyler, whoever, some Billy Graham. They'd be at the barbecue. So I think he was smart and intelligent enough that he picked up bits and pieces from all these, and then put it together. Brilliant. And when him and Kevin Sullivan both worked together, it was magic. I love Kevin Sullivan, always have.
Oh, I do too. We're trying to get him on the show.
Oh, wonderful. He was so helpful to me.
We are trying to get him on the show. Unfortunately, WCW, for whatever reason, didn't quite see Mike Graham's vision. Without, and I'm not going to ask you to reveal anything you don't want to reveal, but what was it about Mike that he felt like he couldn't go on?
Like he had his head up against. I think it was probably corporate. He was raised up with his daddy. It was very small, decision making, working and learning the talent, putting matches. Everything Mike learned came from a small mom and pop type operation.
Right.
Once he got with WCW, and they made their changes. When they brought Bischoff and they had Jim Herd come in, who totally screwed up, and there was no consistency there, And finally, not only Mike, but a lot of other guys just kind of gave up, went for the paycheck until the paycheck went away, and that's what happened. When they had the wars and they were winning, WWE, had some good story, good things going on, and Vince started dangling some big checks, and some of the guys started disappearing.
You know what? That's a great segue. You led me right into a great question for you. Did corporate wrestling kill the wrestling business?
Corporate being run by non-wrestlers killed the business.
Okay.
If the corporation or the board and all the decision makers were actually at one time wrestlers or had that mind, whether it be a manager or just somebody on the inside, but you had money people, and that was all they knew, dollars and cents, bottom line.
Yeah, you're right.
Vince, I think, got more and more into that. I think when he was coming through with his father, his father was into the money, but he still ran it tight operation. But you can only go so big. It's like I come from a restaurant background, and when you have one restaurant, it's easy to keep your hands in it. Once
Yeah.
you got 10 or 15 or 20, now you got to rely on other people to make certain decisions for you.
Yeah.
If those aren't the right people, which is, I think, what happened in a lot of the corporate wrestling America, that's what happened. The decision makers were now looking at the bottom line. They were looking at things that they didn't understand.
I
And they
think
wouldn't
you,
listen.
you nailed it with, especially with WCW, because you had guys in WCW who had no business at all anywhere near a wrestling company. Guys like Bill Bush and Jim Herd. I mean,
Mhm.
here, Jim Herd came from Pizza Hut. What
Yeah.
the hell did he know about running a wrestling company? Okay, so he made money for Pizza Hut. God bless him. But, selling pizza is not the same as selling a wrestling product.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one who made the transition pretty well was Eric Bischoff.
Well, Eric made the transition. I got my own thoughts on that, which I'll share with you. And people who watch this show know how I feel about that. Eric was a bullshitter.
Mm-hmm.
Eric was able to bullshit his way into deals.
Yes.
And look, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Look, Paul Heyman did the same thing with ECW. He took a local regional promotion from Philadelphia, and we still talk about ECW, and they've been out of business for 22 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Look at WCW, could have been today still a contender. But, when you got a pizza salesman running the company,
that's right,
and not a wrestling guy, then, you got a problem, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. I think Bischoff started at one point to become a wrestling guy, especially with the NWO. He was now in the ring. He was a managerial. His son started wrestling. So he got more into it, but it was too late.
On one hand, you got, and on one hand, you got, a guy like Eric Bischoff. And on the other hand, you got a guy like Vince Russo. Now, Vince Russo, of course, wrote himself in as an on-air personality, but let's be honest about it. He's largely a writer.
Yes.
What do you feel about the role of writers in wrestling? Back in the day, Randy, when you and I grew up watching wrestling, you had somebody called the booker.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have writers. Now there are no more bookers, and they're all writers. So tell me what you think about somebody like Vince Russo as a wrestling writer.
As a writer, he was probably much better than he was being in charge of everything. And I go back to Jimmy Cornette, who was nothing, started out as a photographer, as a kid. Like Jimmy, don't like Jimmy, whatever. His mouth gets him in trouble nowadays.
Yeah.
Before it was part of his gimmick. Now it's for real. Personally, I love Jimmy. He was always wonderful to me. Absolutely great guy. And in his own way, like Kevin Sullivan, like Paul Heyman, they have a gift. They have a knack. They can put things together. They should be in charge. You talked about like bookers and writers and everything else. I would think that if somebody gets in their mind, they want to start a feud with you and I, okay, then you don't get a couple of non-wrestling geeks over here writing the storyline.
Exactly.
Let you and I, maybe along with the writer, give our ideas, what we think from a wrestling point of view. Mm-hmm. And, we're in there and we see the fan reactions. They don't see it all on TV. They don't see it all on their screens. Sure. We know what's selling. We know what's getting heat and what's not. So we tell him, we think it should go this way and maybe about this long. Okay, writers, put it on paper how you want it to do it. Take it to the higher ups to get the approval. And then don't script us. Just let us go with it.
Well, thank you for saying that, because here's the thing now, and you know this, Randy. Everything now is so scripted, so word for word. Back in the day when you and I were, again, in the, more actively in the business, there were things called bullet points. You had bullet points.
Yes.
Here's a couple of things to hit on. Tell them what time the show is, where the show is, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Who you're wrestling and what to expect.
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes could do that in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say something like, Ric Flair, I'm going to meet you in the Omni at 7:30, Ric Flair. In Atlanta, Georgia, Ric Flair. I'm going to meet you at 7:30 in the Omni. And when we get there, Ric Flair, I'm going to beat your ass. He would tell you what he was going to do, what time, who he was wrestling, and where it was in one sentence. Okay?
But he had that gift. Guys now, they're not they're not in the gift. Now they have to go through an acting school. They go through a promo school. They say not only bullet points, but they say, this is what you say. And they got a little earpiece in a lot of cases,
Isn't that
you can
ridiculous?
tell it's scripted. You can tell that they don't believe what they're saying. When Dusty said something, you believe that son of a plumber.
That's exactly it. And you confirmed and you nailed what I said earlier. The suspension of disbelief. If they don't believe it, Randy, well, then how are we as fans supposed to believe it? How, in other words, how do you get them to buy into it if they're not buying into it? You know?
Well, and again, back the old days, even in when I was working there on TV and that, you had like your squash matches, whatever, okay?
Yeah.
Now you look at Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or any of those things, when there's a crowd there, it could be a pay-per-view. That's what they don't have pay-per-views no more. They got all the big name things, but $9.95 and your first pay-per-view is free and all this.
Yeah.
People aren't going to spend $60 or $70 anymore.
No. Well, the problem is there's too many of them. There used to be. Here's the thing: when you and I remember, because we're old enough to remember, there were 4 pay-per-views a year. You had WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble.
That was it.
That was it. 4. Every 3 months they ran another pay-per-view, the big one. Mm-hmm. WrestleMania always started off like what, around March, April, right?
Yes.
And the next one would have been like Survivor Series. Mm-hmm. All right. Then I think maybe the Rumble, and then SummerSlam, then the Rumble. Because SummerSlam was always around what, like August, somewhere around there.
Yeah, fall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they went to doing a pay-per-view every month, and sometimes 2 in a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's too much.
And you'd see the same match on Monday Raw for free.
Thank you. Terrible. Exactly.
Somebody's non-wrestlers making wrestlers' decisions. That's the problem.
That's a scary thought, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. We barely scratched the surface of this one. I gotta have you come back. I gotta have you come back. I tell you what. Why don't we do this? Why don't we plan on having you come back with us? Right now, why don't you give everybody your plugs, your social media? Where can they buy that amazing T-shirt you got?
Woo! Randomania running wild, brother. Randy Hogan on Facebook. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. They got my shirts on this. I got the yellow and red. I got the red. I got the black. I got sunglasses. I got keychains. I got trading cards. Got all that stuff on there. And you can buy it direct, Easy to find, easy to navigate. As far as upcoming events, man, I'm afraid to open my mouth because you don't know what's coming up,
Well,
in August for the gathering, and I got a Wrestlers Classic in September, and let me see, October. There's another Wrestle Fest in November, WrestleCade in Charlotte and everything. But you don't know what's going to happen. And I've had 2 or 3 that have dropped off. And there's some other ones that I'm hoping to get picked up for. But anyways.
Yeah.
Everything I'm a wide open book on Facebook. I'm on there. My family's on there. My merchandise is on there.
Excellent. All right. So that's Randy Hogan on Facebook. Trust me, folks, he's easy to find. And for us, Wrestling with the Future, our shirts are available on Wrestling with the Future on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Wrestling with the Future. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Wrestling Future. Check us out on all of our platforms: Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Google Play, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Podbean FM, Podbay FM, TuneIn Radio, and soon to be, we got our fingers crossed, soon to be on Sirius XM. Ooh, yeah. We're waiting to hear about that one. If you got show ideas, suggestions, guest suggestions, hit us up at wrestlingwiththefuture@gmail.com. If you want to reach me, I'm easy to find. I'm Angelo DeCipio on Facebook, or you can reach us at our private group, Wrestling with the Future Podcast on Facebook. Again, we are on Facebook and Twitter. We have a very visible social media presence. Stop by and say hi. Until next time. Oh, by the way, just to give you a heads up, some of the upcoming guests we've got. We are doing a tribute to the ladies, Ladies Night Part 2. We will have Joyce Grable and Casey. We will have Leilani Kai, Casey Carlisle. We will have Sam Houston coming back on the show. We will have Jimmy Snuka's best friend, Phil LaRusso. We've got, oh my God, who we got? We got a lot of stuff coming up. Holy Jesus. Cowboy Scott Casey, Johnny Mantell, J.J. Dillon is coming back. Tony Villano from the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame will be with us. We've got like a virtual who's who of wrestling. And I will tell you what, we are booked all the way into the end of July right now. So if you want to know who's coming, hit us up on our Facebook, and you'll see there's a list there that'll be up either tonight or tomorrow with all of our upcoming guests. So for Randy Hogan, I'm Psychic Medium Angelo, brother.
What you gonna do?
What you gonna do, brother? And once again, thank you to Bill Apter, and we will get Bill back on the show. Randy, of course, will be back with us. But until then, next time, folks, happy wrestling. We'll see you about. Bye-bye.
It was a true honor.